Welcome to another episode of Community Green, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of methane emissions and explore the forefront of technological advancements. I'm your host, Tracy Boyd, and today
we have the honor of sitting down with a true leader in the world of environmental technology and client support. Tom Dockery is a Picarro veteran with boots on the ground in the very early stages of our first solution deployment. He brings his vast expertise and passion to every engagement. Today, we go beyond the resume to uncover the stories, the challenges, and the vision that have fueled his journey.
So I joined Picarro in March of 2015, so it's a little over 8 years. So I have had 4 different roles within Picarro. So, remembering at the beginning, in the early days, we wore many hats. So you were everything from marketing to product management to project management to salesperson to customer support. Title now is Senior Director of Global Operations, Field Operations, and Technical Support. The way we manage a successful delivery is all about high coverage, high contact at a couple of different levels. So we tend to and always insist upon having a team with one individual responsible for managing the deployment. And the deployment can go in various phases, but it's all about having the right contact experts present, to take care of various things from the installation to the training, to the rollout of workflows, all that sort of thing. But we put a team in place whose sole responsibility is to ensure that the deployment goes the way it should, and then it's tailored to customer specific situation, customer specific work structures and such. The first part is, when we get to that stage where we are actually customers taking receipt of a system, we've done an installation together, either us doing it directly or working with the customer for working with their fleet teams or however they like to do the installation. All of that begins a team building between us and the customer, so that we understand who's doing what. Who has what kind of responsibility on our customer side. And at that point, it allows us to kind of, again, marry up not only the work, but the right people so that we can work together and make it as streamlined and as efficient as possible. There's no way around saying this is a change. This is a change of reasonable significance. And, how you structure it, how you build plans in advance of actually needing to do X, Y, Z is really important in the disruption factor. And as we always do, we try to make it fit with whatever the customer's ability to consume the technology and consume the activity back into their operations at their rate, at their pace. So, that's something that we try to plan out as much in advance as we possibly can. Some of it's going to be, you don't really get a sense for what's going to be different or what's going to be difficult until you get into it. But that's where, again, having the right people who have done it before, and this is really important. One of our biggest value propositions is we've done this 30 or 40 times. And in that, we've learned a lot about how you deploy and how you drive successful adoptions of the technology. So it's real important that we can bring that to the table. And the other thing that kind of helps us do that is looking at what other people have done in that whole activity, other customers, and it also allows us to bring other customers into the conversation. So when a new customer says, I don't get it, I don't understand how I want to do this, we certainly have the ability to pull in other customers who've gone through similar, kinds of pain or difficulty in making a change. And it allows them to kind of see how others have done it, not just listen to how we think it should be done. There are some very very common, kind of hurdles and things to kind of work through. I would say that, and we tend to have lots of different ways people have resolved the problems. And that's one of the things that is kind of interesting to see how the industry has adopted over the years about how they approach solving problems like resourcing drivers or resourcing analysts, how to deal with things like scheduling driving activity. Those kinds of things have kind of shifted over the last 7 or 8 years. But there are still, very predictable things that you will encounter and that our customers will encounter in that road to adoption. And so we can kind of predict and describe for our customers in advance. It's like, be prepared. We're going to need to kind of address this down the road, and it's likely to be, something that will either catch you off guard or you won't be expecting it. So, let's try to put a plan in place for it now. From a timing perspective, it gets to be very, very different. In terms of just, you look at the from T0 to I'm up and running, is fairly different for customers depending upon how they deploy. I mean, we have customers who are like all in, all now, all applications, big fleet, do it all. It's kind of like rip the Band-Aid off, let's get it out of the way. And then there are others who have kind of taken a more gradual approach to it. I'm going to try with this application. I'm going to do a couple of cars. Maybe I spread the cars out and do them a couple of different ways in different locations or different regions. So there are very different timelines out there. But again, the barriers, if you will, the things that they run into are not that dissimilar. Another great question, because at some level, it's been the combination of the two. I mean, when we started down this path, it was all about compliance. It was all about compliance survey. And the system and the solution that we brought to the market was absolutely focused on that. And so it didn't really start to think about or provide any direction to how you do emissions, even though emissions quantification was a part of the very, very early developments. There really wasn't a driving, force behind it. There wasn't a forcing function that said, this is more important than compliance. And compliance became the dominant solution that everybody wanted. So there was very much so a focus on that. And compliance is probably the more complicated beast. It's the more problematic deployment, because you do have regulators you have to be concerned with. You have to get a lot of people rethinking about how you get that job done. So that has, in the early days, that's where a lot of the focus is. Now you got an entirely, not entirely, but you have a different model. You have a lot of environmental, agendas that are being pushed, both at a federal and a local level and at a global level. You have an evolving industry's perspective on the importance of that. And so it has shifted a little bit how people look at and their interest in taking on the technology has just changed. It's that whole dynamic of, when we first started out with this, the analogy I use, it was like pushing a rope. Okay. You were pushing a rope into the market, and you know what pushing a rope is. Now somebody's pulling on the rope. Okay. Now on the other side, in the market and in the regulatory space and the government space, somebody's pulling on that rope. And now we're along for the ride. We're on the other end of that rope, and it's moving fast. Okay. Right. Exactly. So it is an entirely different game, where we were pushing before and the rope was doing exactly what you'd think, would pile up in a corner as we tried to push it, as opposed to it being pulled out in a nice taut straight line. The best way to do that is just FaceTime. We spend a tremendous amount of time in customer-facing either meetings or actually face-to-face, and we try to do it on a very regular basis. So even if everything's going smoothly, we're gonna make an effort to get out to our clients' locations to see every installation, every system, to talk to the people who are driving, the people who are running reports. It's not uncommon for us to set up a cadence and a tempo with our customers where we regularly come out to do and meet with them either on a regular occurring operational kind of get together. We get invited into those, and we have specific segments of an agenda where we talk about what's going on with the Picarro method, what's going on with the technology, what are the questions, what do people see that they want to see differently. And because we're always not just trying to solve problems, we're trying to figure out how do we make this stuff better? How do we make the solution easier? So there are opportunities for us to immerse ourselves in regularly standing operational, meetings. And sometimes those things happen annually. Sometimes they're biannually. Sometimes they're quarters. But we make sure that we're available, and we try really hard to make our customers feel comfortable that they can invite us into those conversations and either put us into a small piece of the agenda and then we go away, but we're there, and so there's that formal kind of thing. And then there's, we do, as we take on a new customer, we start out with nearly weekly, and in many cases weekly meetings with a collection of the team and their teams to talk about the deployment. And as that tapers off in frequency, based upon customers' rollout and where they are and their familiarity of how they're doing things, we make sure we continue to have meetings at some regular pace. So there's always, we're never far behind, and one of our biggest value propositions is that this is just not about making sure the system's working. This is about, understanding how the data is being utilized. How is the data being consumed by our customer? Is it meeting the need? It's very much so we want to be there as a consultant in this whole thing, not just an implementer. As soon as the decision has been made, then we jump right in and start scheduling, both the installation and the initial training. We're going to try to get as many people trained up in the exact same week that we get the installation done, to be able to make that car a usable piece of capital and a tool. And so we will go in and do training. As soon as we do the installation or support the installation, we'll go right into driver training. We'll start collecting data based upon the driver training. We'll be using that data to run reports with the analysts or people who will be involved in processing the data at the customer site. We'll be, here's the buttons you push, but not only the buttons you push, but how you look at the data. How do you interpret the data? And so we try really hard to get that going right out of the chute. And one of the most important parts of it is together working with the customer, we want to develop a plan. We want to develop, what do they want to try to do first? And because you could go down a path of compliance, you can go down a path of quality checks, you can go down a super emitter hunting, exercise, you can go through an emissions exercise, but let's get it documented so we together understand what the plan is. And certainly that's a place where our customers kind of set the tempo. However, we'll certainly be there as a consultant of sorts to say, if you're going to do that, do this too. Here's the kind of things that make a lot of sense. And if there are resource issues doing that, then we'll work through that together. We're not going to say, no, you absolutely have to do it this way. There is no absolutely this is how you do it. But we're going to try everywhere to have a high touch and making sure that, that the system gets seen, the system gets experienced by as many people as possible, as early as possible. Because I always say the worst thing that could possibly happen is we come out, we install, we do training, and then the car sits in the parking lot. And, when that happens, it's like zero. It's a big zero. And it's a big red flag for me. And it is, I think, for our team too. And certainly when we see that happen, we're immediately trying to get hold of the right people in the customer to understand, okay, what's stopping it? And, and there are some predictable things. It's always like, well, I don't have drivers yet. I don't have, investigators. I'm too busy with something else. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is many people, when they adopt a system, are busy doing other things. We always say they have other jobs, and now we've added something to their job. And so, there is that point where you have to kind of help the customers, adopt to saying, this is the job. This is the new job. And so you have to try to figure out how to make sure that people don't get, scared. I mean, we have the same job. I mean, you buy the latest and greatest Wi-Fi enabled thermostat and you stick it on the wall. And if you don't exercise your application or you do something like this, you forget all about it. And all of a sudden, all that value that you spent all the time trying to figure out, I want the biggest and best and latest, goes by the wayside and just goes completely unutilized, no value. So we don't want that to happen. My team, we talk about performance metrics, and the performance metrics may not be what people typically think of. When I think of performance metrics, I'm thinking about how often was that car driven in the last quarter? How many reports have been generated? I don't really care what kind. I just care that it's been turned on and they're using it. I'll figure out later with the team what they're doing, but the first and most important thing is it being used? So we can see that. I mean, our team can see that without, we have access to being able to see what report activities and surveyor activities are going on, so we can tell what people are doing. So there's always a way for us to kind of get a sense, a ballpark, as to, how much activity is going on. For me, and I always say, it's one thing to say the customer's using it for compliance, because I also ask the team, I say, what are they using it for? Can you off the top of your head with confidence say what they're using the system for? And we have the 4 basic pillars of use, right? So it's compliance, it's emissions capture, it's super emitters, and there's DIMP management, kind of DIMP, data collection. For me, it's kind of like all my team should be able to tell at a drop of a hat, where everybody is on that list of activities. What are they using the system for? But for me, the real thing that cries success is when customers start using that thing completely outside of those 4 pillars. When they start recognizing the value that the system has in the parking lot. The tool is there. It's in the toolbox. And there's so many ways you can use it, whether it's in, I had an overpressurization. I had an odor call that I can't quite figure out. I had a strike and I don't know if I had a problem. These kinds of things. It's like the first time somebody says, aha, we got that Picarro thing. Let's go drive it and see what happens. And that to me is like the light bulb's gone off. People have figured out the power of this tool because it's so much. It has so much capabilities. The prescribed 4 are very key. Don't get me wrong. Those are the high values. But when you get to a point where you've integrated into your toolkit and you really see it as a problem solver and you see it for all the different ways you can use it, then you've graduated. Then you've become. So I think it gets back to, our commitment to ensuring that the customer gets through this moment of change, because it's change. And nobody likes it when their cheese gets moved. I mean, that's just the way it is, the way people are. And so, we spend a lot of time helping people, see that it's difficult, and understand how to get through it. So, and I think that it's our investment, our commitment to having the resources available to do that. You can go from the basic support resources at Picarro all the way to the top. Okay. And customers can get to that very easily. And everybody's available. It's a huge team effort. And so, even though we have an organization, that manages it as its primary responsibility, the way that it branches out and ensures that things get dealt with, questions get answered, problems get solved is very fluid. The way the team operates is very non-siloed. It's a very, it's all about customer satisfaction. And I think our customer ratings show that.